When I say I'm doing this only for you, I don't mean it as a cliche or a line that sounds good on paper. I mean it in the rawest, most honest way possible. Because behind those words lies something bigger than a promise. It's purpose. It's intention. It's that quiet force that gets you up in the morning when the odds are stacked against you. It's not about ego, and it's not about applause. It's about the deep understanding that what you're building, what you're fighting for, what you're sacrificing for, it's not just for you. It's for someone else, for something greater, for the people who might never even know your name. Most people live their lives chasing personal goals, and that's fine, but something extraordinary happens when your why stops being about you. When you look someone in the eyes, maybe it's your child, your partner, your team, or even humanity itself, and say, I'm doing this only for you, everything changes. Suddenly, you're not fueled by personal gain anymore. You're driven by responsibility, by love, by a sense of duty that can't be bought or faked. You move differently. You think differently. You endure more. Because when it's not about you anymore, quitting stops being an option. Think about it, every great leap forward in human history has come from someone who was doing it for someone else. The scientists who spent sleepless nights chasing discovery, the explorers who risked everything to expand what we know, the engineers who built systems that connected billions, they weren't doing it for comfort or fame. They were doing it because they believed in something bigger than themselves. That belief gives you an unshakable foundation. It's the difference between chasing success and creating significance. And it's not always dramatic. Sometimes it's subtle. It's a mother working 2 jobs so her kids can have a better life. It's a teacher staying late to help a struggling student. It's an entrepreneur pushing through failure after failure because they believe the world can be better. Every one of those moments carries the same heartbeat. I'm doing this only for you. It's quiet, but it's powerful. It's invisible, but it shapes everything. Here's the thing. When you act with that kind of intention, it changes the way people see you. They stop seeing just what you're doing and start feeling why you're doing it. That's what inspires others to follow, to believe, to care. Because purpose is contagious. When people sense that you're not acting out of greed or pride, but out of genuine care or conviction, they start to trust the vision. They start to believe in the mission. That's how movements begin. That's how innovation spreads. That's how change happens. But the meaning behind I'm doing this only for you isn't just about others. It's also about honesty with yourself. It forces you to strip away excuses. If you claim to be doing it for someone, then you owe them your best effort, your most authentic work. There's no room for half-hearted attempts or empty words. You can't say I'm doing this for you and then give up when things get tough. Those words hold you accountable. They remind you why you started. They become the anchor when everything else feels uncertain. And sometimes it's lonely. You might not get credit. People might not understand your motives. But you don't do it for recognition. You do it because you believe that what you're creating or building or giving will matter. That belief is the fuel that keeps everything alive. It's what transforms ordinary effort into legacy. So when you hear me say, I'm doing this only for you, know that it's not a performance. It's a declaration of purpose. It's a reminder that the most powerful thing any of us can do is dedicate our energy, our intelligence, and our heart to something beyond ourselves. Because in the end, that's where the real meaning is found, not in what we get, but in what we give. Not in who we are, but in who we serve. And when you live from that place, when your every action echoes with that truth, you don't just make progress. You make history. There's something almost paradoxical about motivation. We tend to think that the best way to push ourselves forward is to focus on what we want, success, recognition, achievement. But the truth is, the deepest, most unstoppable kind of motivation doesn't come from what we want for ourselves. It comes from what we want for someone else. That's what I call selfless motivation, the kind that doesn't fade when things get hard, because it's rooted in something much deeper than ego or reward. When you're driven purely by your own ambition, you eventually hit a wall. Fatigue sets in. Doubt creeps up. You start asking yourself if it's really worth it. But when your reason for pushing forward is connected to others, when you're doing it for the people who believe in you, for your family, for your team, or even for humanity, that's when you tap into a source of energy that doesn't run out. You find yourself pushing past exhaustion, past fear, past uncertainty, because giving up isn't just letting yourself down. It's letting them down. I've seen this again and again in people who achieve the impossible. They all share one thing in common. They're not just in it for themselves. Think about the firefighters who run toward danger instead of away from it. The doctors who work through the night, saving lives, one heartbeat at a time. The engineers who spend years solving problems that most people don't even see. They don't do it for fame or comfort. They do it because they care, because they can't not do it. Because they understand that their effort, their sacrifice, might make someone else's life better. That's the kind of motivation that builds legacies. The power of selfless motivation isn't about grand gestures either. It can show up in the smallest acts, in a friend who listens when you're at your worst, or a leader who puts their people first. These moments are quiet, almost invisible, but they hold more strength than we realize. Because when you take yourself out of the equation, when your focus shifts from how can I win to how can I help, something incredible happens. Your perspective expands. Your energy multiplies. You start to see the bigger picture. That's what fuels real innovation, real progress. You stop thinking in terms of personal gain and start thinking in terms of collective impact. You stop asking, what do I get out of this? And start asking, what will this make possible for others? And that shift, that single mental pivot, is where breakthroughs come from. Because when you work for others, you work with a different level of passion and precision. You care more. You're willing to go further. And ironically, that's when you end up achieving far more than you ever could have if it had just been about you. But there's something else, something that's often overlooked. Selfless motivation doesn't mean ignoring yourself. It's not about burnout or martyrdom. It's about alignment. When your purpose is tied to service, it actually gives you strength. It keeps you grounded when everything feels chaotic. You wake up each day knowing that what you're doing matters, even if nobody's watching. That clarity, that sense of direction, becomes an unstoppable force. And yes, sometimes it hurts. You'll sacrifice things, you'll lose sleep, you'll face doubt. There will be moments when you wonder if anyone even notices the effort you're making. But that's the beauty of it. Selfless motivation isn't transactional, it's transformational. You give because it's right, not because it's easy. You create because it's needed, not because it's convenient. And in the process, you become stronger, more resilient, more human. Every major advancement in science, in technology, in human rights has been driven by that mindset. People who looked beyond their own comfort and saw a future worth building. People who believed that even one act of courage, one idea, one invention, could change everything for others. That belief, that fire, is what propels civilization forward. So when you find yourself at that point where motivation feels low, when you're tired or uncertain or standing in front of another impossible challenge, ask yourself one simple question. Who am I doing this for? Because the moment you connect your work to something or someone beyond yourself, you stop being limited by your own boundaries. You start being driven by something infinite. And that's when you stop chasing motivation and start embodying it. Because selfless purpose doesn't just keep you moving, it makes you unstoppable. There's a subtle but profound line that every one of us navigates in life, the line between love and obligation. At first glance, it might seem simple. Love is giving freely, obligation is giving because you feel you must. But in reality, that line is blurred, shifting constantly, depending on our choices, our mindset, and the people we care about. Understanding it and walking it carefully can make the difference between actions that uplift and actions that drain. Love, in its purest form, is effortless. It doesn't count the cost. It doesn't tally hours spent or sacrifices made. You act because you want to, because there's a connection, because it feels right in a way that defies logic. You don't question whether it's convenient. You don't ask if you'll be thanked. You simply act because the other person matters, because their happiness, their growth, their well-being resonates deeply with you. That's love, at its core, a force so powerful it moves mountains without anyone even noticing. Obligation, on the other hand, carries a different weight. It often comes with conditions, spoken or unspoken. It's the should and the must that we layer onto ourselves or allow others to layer upon us. It can masquerade as love, and for a long time, we can convince ourselves that doing something because we feel we have to is no different than doing it because we want to. But the distinction is important because obligation can slowly erode joy. It can turn giving into a burden, action into resentment. And when that happens, even the most well-intentioned acts lose their power. The challenge is that, in life, love and obligation often overlap. Parents sacrifice endlessly for their children. Entrepreneurs work grueling hours to fulfill a mission. Friends support each other through every storm. At the surface, these acts can look like obligation, the long hours, the hard work, the tireless commitment. But the difference lies in the why. Are we acting from a deep, authentic place of care, or are we acting because we feel trapped by expectation, tradition, or guilt? That subtle distinction is what separates fulfillment from fatigue, inspiration from burnout, connection from mere duty. One of the most important lessons in navigating this line is learning to honor both. Love without boundaries can overwhelm you. Obligation without love can hollow you out. If you find yourself giving endlessly, yet feeling depleted, it's worth asking, am I acting from love or from a sense of duty that no longer nourishes me? Sometimes saying no or stepping back isn't a betrayal, it's an act of respect for both yourself and the people you care about. Because genuine love flourishes when it's free, not when it's coerced, even by our own expectations. But let's not underestimate the power of conscious choice. When we choose to act out of love, even when it's hard, even when it stretches us, we bridge the gap between obligation and meaning. We transform effort into impact, struggle into connection. That's the beauty of intentionality. It allows us to give fully, knowing that our actions carry purpose beyond mere obligation. It's about moving from doing because we must to doing because we believe. And the truth is, love itself often requires sacrifice. It demands patience, courage, and persistence. But the sacrifices made from love, not guilt, feel different. They energize rather than deplete. They elevate relationships, fuel progress, and cultivate trust. When your actions are guided by genuine care, people sense it. They feel it. They respond not because they are obligated, but because they recognize the authenticity in what you're doing. That's how connections deepen and legacies are built. The line between love and obligation is not fixed. It's dynamic, a dance we navigate every day. But the clarity comes when we are honest with ourselves, when we recognize our motivations and align our actions with intention. Because the more we act from love, the more we empower both ourselves and others. And in doing so, we transform ordinary effort into extraordinary impact. At the end of the day, the goal is simple: to give in a way that uplifts, not drains. To act in a way that connects, not coerces. To live in a way where love fuels every choice. And obligation becomes a guide, not a chain. When you achieve that balance, every action, every sacrifice, every effort carries a resonance far beyond the moment. It becomes something timeless, something unmistakably human, something that matters. And in that space where love and intention align, what you give is no longer measured in hours or effort, but in the undeniable truth that you are acting from the heart, fully, intentionally, and without compromise. Purpose is one of those things that sounds simple in theory, but reveals itself slowly, almost imperceptibly, over time. We often think of purpose as something external, a goal to reach, a milestone to achieve, a problem to solve. And yes, purpose can be measured in results, in accomplishments, in impact. But the real transformation comes not from the destination itself, but from what happens to us along the way. When you dedicate yourself to a cause, to a person, or to something greater than yourself, something inside you begins to shift. You start to see the world differently. You start to see yourself differently. You become more than you were. Personal transformation through purpose doesn't happen overnight. It's not a sudden lightning bolt that strikes and changes everything. It's incremental. It's the accumulation of small, deliberate choices, repeated over and over, that gradually reshape who you are and how you operate in the world. When you wake up every day with intention, when you remind yourself that what you do matters to someone or something beyond yourself, you start to act differently. You make decisions differently. You endure challenges differently. You carry yourself with a clarity and confidence that comes from knowing that your life has meaning beyond your own ambitions. And that clarity is powerful, because when your purpose is clear, fear loses its grip. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of uncertainty. It all becomes secondary when the reason behind your actions is bigger than the risks you face. You start to embrace discomfort, because discomfort is the currency of growth. You start to tackle problems you would have avoided, not because they are easy, but because they are necessary to fulfill the purpose you've committed to. That's how ordinary people accomplish extraordinary things, not by avoiding challenges, but by letting their purpose carry them through the hardest moments. Purpose also transforms your relationships. When your actions are guided by something meaningful, people notice. They respond to the energy and the conviction you bring into the room. They feel inspired not because of what you've achieved, but because of why you're doing it. And in that space, collaboration becomes easier, trust becomes stronger, and the people around you start to rise to meet the same standard you hold for yourself. Purpose is contagious in the best way. It doesn't demand loyalty or obedience. It invites commitment because people sense that the mission is worth it. Perhaps most importantly, purpose transforms how you see yourself. When you act with intention and invest your energy in something that matters, you start to shed limiting beliefs. You realize that the obstacles you thought were immovable are actually surmountable. You discover strengths you didn't know you had: resilience, creativity, endurance, courage. You begin to define yourself not by what comes easily, but by what you are willing to endure, to fight for, and to build. Every sacrifice, every long night, every failure becomes a stepping stone, not a burden. Purpose turns struggle into growth and effort into identity. But purpose isn't static. As we evolve, our understanding of what matters shifts. That's part of the transformation, the willingness to reassess, to adapt, to refine your focus as you gain insight and experience. It requires honesty, reflection, and courage to stay aligned with what truly drives you, rather than what seems convenient or expected. The people and problems that matter to you today might not be the same tomorrow, and embracing that evolution allows you to grow without losing integrity or direction. And here's the most striking truth. Transformation through purpose doesn't just benefit you, it radiates outward. The more you step into your potential, the more impact you have on the world around you. Your actions ripple, inspiring others to step into their own purpose. What begins as an inward journey becomes an outward force, changing communities, industries, even entire fields of human endeavor. Transformation, in that sense, is both deeply personal and profoundly universal. So when you think about what drives you, don't just focus on the goals or the recognition, focus on the purpose behind every effort. Let it be the compass that guides your choices, the fuel that powers your persistence, and the lens through which you measure progress. Because when you live with purpose, every challenge becomes an opportunity, every setback becomes a lesson, and every effort contributes to the person you are becoming, someone stronger, wiser, and more capable than you ever imagined. And in the end, that transformation is the most valuable legacy you can create. Not just what you achieve, but who you become while achieving it. Gratitude is one of those things that often gets overlooked in the rush of life. We measure success by milestones, by achievements, by the tangible things we can point to and check off. But the quiet, invisible force of gratitude has a power that far outweighs what can be quantified. Gratitude changes the way we see the world. It changes the way we see each other. And it changes the way we see ourselves. It's subtle, but it is transformative in ways that are often surprising, even profound. When you truly feel gratitude, you begin to recognize the interconnectedness of everything. No one achieves anything entirely on their own. Every breakthrough, every success, every moment of progress is supported by countless unseen hands, by countless acts of generosity, guidance, and encouragement. Gratitude allows us to notice that web of support. It turns simple recognition into deep acknowledgement. It takes the people and moments that might otherwise pass unnoticed and illuminates them, showing us that every contribution matters, no matter how small. And it's not just about saying thank you as a formality. Gratitude is about seeing the effort behind the effort. It's about recognizing that someone gave their time, their energy, their intellect, or their heart to make something possible. When you feel gratitude in this way, it inspires humility, but also action. You start to ask yourself, if so much has been given to me, what can I give in return? Gratitude becomes a cycle, a silent, self-reinforcing loop of generosity and care that multiplies impact far beyond what we might imagine. There's also a transformative power in gratitude on a personal level. When you focus on the things you are grateful for, your perspective shifts. Challenges don't disappear, but they no longer dominate your thinking. Obstacles become opportunities to learn, to grow, and to appreciate the path you're on. Gratitude rewires how we process experience. It doesn't make life easier, but it makes life richer, fuller, and more meaningful. It allows us to operate from a place of abundance rather than scarcity, from appreciation rather than entitlement. And that mindset, over time, becomes a foundation for resilience, creativity, and innovation. Gratitude also strengthens relationships in ways that are often invisible but essential. When you express genuine thanks, people feel seen, they feel valued, and when people feel valued, they are more willing to give their best, to support you, to invest in your shared vision. Gratitude creates a culture, whether in a family, a team, or an organization, where effort is recognized and contribution is honored. It turns transactional interactions into meaningful connections. And those connections, over time, form the backbone of trust, loyalty, and collaboration that can achieve the extraordinary. One of the most remarkable aspects of gratitude is that it doesn't require grand gestures. It doesn't need to be flashy or performative. A simple acknowledgement, a heartfelt word, a pause to reflect on what someone has done can have an enormous ripple effect. Small actions of gratitude compound, influencing not just the people directly involved, but the environment, the energy, and the culture around them. Gratitude is like a force field that amplifies effort, multiplies kindness, and transforms ordinary actions into extraordinary impact. And yet, gratitude also has a quiet personal power. It reminds us to stay grounded, to recognize that no matter how much we accomplish, we are part of a larger story. That awareness keeps ambition in check and humility in balance. It teaches us that recognition and reward are fleeting, but the impact we have on others and the relationships we nurture endure far longer. It's a reminder that progress isn't just about milestones or accolades, it's about connection, contribution, and the ripples we create. So, when you think about the people who have shaped your journey, don't let them go unacknowledged. When you reflect on the circumstances that allowed you to move forward, don't take them for granted. Gratitude is not weakness. It's strength. It's not passive. It's active. It's a lens through which you can see the world more clearly, operate more intentionally, and build a legacy that transcends the individual. And in that quiet, deliberate acknowledgement, you find a force more powerful than any strategy, more sustaining than any goal, and more enduring than any achievement. Because gratitude doesn't just change the world around you, it changes the world within you. And when you carry that power with you, you realize that every act of thanks is also an act of transformation, capable of turning ordinary moments into extraordinary life. Words are powerful, but action is transformative. Saying, "I'm doing this only for you," carries meaning, intention, and promise. But if it stops at words, it remains just that, a phrase. The true power lies in turning those words into tangible action, in bridging the gap between intention and reality. Because action is where impact happens, where commitment becomes visible, and where the phrase evolves from sentiment into something that truly changes lives. Action begins with clarity. You have to know exactly what you're committing to and why. Without that understanding, even the best intentions can falter. When you act with purpose, your actions carry weight. They're not scattered or aimless. Every step, every decision, every effort aligns with the reason behind the words. You're no longer just performing tasks. You're translating intention into results. And when those results are aimed at someone else's benefit, when they stem from the idea that your effort matters to someone beyond yourself, that's when action gains, meaning far beyond what you could accomplish alone. Turning words into action also requires courage. It's easy to make promises or declare intentions when the path is smooth and success seems guaranteed. But real action happens when it's difficult, when the outcome is uncertain, when risks are, it's high. Doing it for someone else, truly doing it, means stepping into the unknown, because the importance of your purpose outweighs fear, doubt, or hesitation. You find yourself working harder, thinking bigger, and enduring more, because it's not just about you anymore. Someone else's life, someone else's opportunity, someone else's hope is riding on your willingness to act. That sense of responsibility has a way of breaking through limits you didn't even know existed. Consistency is another crucial element. Action without follow-through is empty. You can say, "I'm doing this only for you," once, twice, or 100 times. But if it's not sustained, if it doesn't translate into daily effort and presence, the words lose their power. Real impact comes from showing up repeatedly, from being reliable even when it's inconvenient or exhausting. Every moment of persistence reinforces the trust that your words carry, proving that your intentions are not fleeting. You begin to see that what you say is inseparable from what you do, and that alignment between words and action builds credibility, influence, and momentum. Turning intention into action also means embracing accountability. When you commit to doing something for someone else, you cannot ignore the outcomes. Successes, failures, missteps, they all matter. Taking responsibility for your actions, owning both the triumphs and the mistakes, strengthens not only your results but also your character. Accountability transforms effort into integrity. It ensures that your words don't float in the abstract but are grounded in real-world consequences, showing that "I'm doing this only for you" is more than a statement, it's a standard you hold yourself to. And there's a subtle yet profound effect that happens when words become action. Inspiration multiplies. When others see you not just talking about purpose or commitment, but actively living it, they respond. They are motivated to act in kind, to step up in their own lives, and to pursue something greater than themselves. Action has a contagious quality. It transforms culture, ignites collaboration, and creates a ripple effect far beyond what one person alone could achieve. What begins as a personal promise becomes a movement, an ethos, a force that shapes more than just individual outcomes. It shapes communities, industries, and sometimes even generations. Finally, turning words into action means recognizing that impact is not always immediate or visible. The results of your efforts may take time to appear, and the people you aim to serve may not even know your name. That's the paradox of meaningful action. It requires patience, faith, and trust that your work matters even when acknowledgement is absent. And in that patience lies growth, because through sustained action, you develop resilience, wisdom, and a deeper understanding of your own capabilities. So when you say, "I'm doing this only for you," don't let it remain a promise in the air. Let it drive you to show up, to commit, to endure, and to create tangible change. Let it transform hesitation into courage, intention into impact, and words into legacy. Because it is only when we move from saying to doing that we truly honor the meaning behind those words. And when action aligns with purpose, when effort matches intention, and when every step is taken with someone else in mind, the phrase stops being just a statement. It becomes a force that shapes the world.